welcome back. Today we're going to talk about a fun little practice that has a lot of insight kind of woven into it. It's something that can help you to really increase your awareness of yourself and other people who you do this with. It connects you more to yourself and also to others, and it's something where you often will discover things about yourself and others that you might not otherwise learn, even with people who you're with all the time or you feel like you know really, really well. So all that is to say, there are a lot of gems to kind of look at throughout this that we'll be talking about as I share more about the practice. So, I'm Sarah Moran. I'm a journalist and educator focused on self care, wellness and well being, resilience, and I appreciate you being here on the show for all of us. So, you may have heard of this practice, but I'm going to encourage you to hang with me because there are so many layers, and we'll be kind of looking at some of those as we go. So the practice is called, or at least I call it, rose, thorn, bud. And I'm going to kind of share what you do throughout. Basically, you're looking for the rose of your day, the highlight, the thorn, a challenge point, and then the bud, something you're looking forward to. And we'll kind of talk through each of those. But this is something that's often used in like a community building way within a school or another group setting. But it's something that what I really want to get through is you can really do this on your own as well. If you live alone or aren't necessarily part of a group, it's a great practice to do on your own to increase your self-awareness. You could do it at night before bed or, with a journal. It's a fun thing for a family to do at dinner. Something you can do with a partner or your roommates, a book club, a church group, a friend you haven't seen for a while. It kind of has a lot of different applications. And what I call this is a reflective practice, which just meaning it helps you pause and kind of go within and reflect on yourself and your day and your life. And that's something that in our, typical modern world, it's such a fast pace, we just don't do enough of that. And it's so beneficial for us. And so these little doses can really add up where you bring in a routine or a practice that, you know, is about reflection and therefore builds your awareness. So let's dive in. So the rows that you would share, and again, if you're doing this with a group, you would be sort of going around and taking turns sharing your rose and your thorn and your bud. The rose is the highlight or a highlight, a bright spot in your day, something you appreciate, something you're grateful for, something that brought you joy. Examples of this could be snuggling with a pet, someone kind taking your cart back for you at the grocery store, seeing a beautiful oriole in your yard, the bird, uh, or crossing something off your list that you've been really wanting to get to, having a great talk with a neighbor, knowing that you got yourself out of your comfort zone and like did it successfully, you did the thing, or running into an old friend, receiving an answer to a prayer, seeing somebody show you that they care, being able to pay a bill that you weren't sure you would pay, laughing out loud about a comic you read or a video clip someone sent you, feeling great about how you did in a game or an event, a meet, a race, a performance, anything like that. It can be something very small, it can be something very, very big for you. But in this looking for and kind of reflecting on your day and going, what were the roses of my day? That helps us to really cultivate more to appreciate, because it sort of primes your brain to look for what's good and to notice it and then to soak it in. And I'll probably talk more about joy in a whole nother episode, but we do have just something to know. We have a negativity bias as humans, which means we're basically wired to look for the negative. This is really a survival mechanism, uh, which I can go into this more another time, but what we can do now is counter that with more consciousness and more awareness. we can counter the negativity bias by just creating practices and doing practices that help us seek joy, seek the positive, seek the good, and then savor it. And this rose thorn bud is one really easy way to do that and to make sure you're like doing it every day if you get into a daily habit with it. Um, Another thing I want to say about this is sometimes people will feel like, oh, how can I feel joyful right now or even feel guilty about looking for joy or having joy when this thing's going on and that thing's going on and this other thing's going on, whether that's in your personal life or in the collective. Uh, how can I look for joy or have any joy when I'm going through this deep grief and loss or this extraordinary challenge just happened, this tragedy, whatever it might be. But what I would say to you is it's even more important then to be able to look for the little shimmers of something positive. Of course, we always acknowledge the challenge um, and be aware of those feelings. But this is a practice that also helps us go, but where can I find something good too? Because we're still here. And so we want to find the things that can kind of bring a little sparkle into our day or uplift us or buoy us. It's good for our mental health. It's good for our physical health to do that. And it helps kind of counteract or balance out what might be going on that's challenging. And what happens when we are able to feel more joyful or have more gratitude in our lives, it literally raises our vibration. And that's something that's not only good for us, but it's good for others too. And one, I guess, easy example for this, if you think about the lift you get from other people when they have a genuine joy. So, for example, like if you see a little toddler and they're like petting a baby chick that they just saw, and their face lights up and they're beaming, and we just observing that gives us a little boost. So think about the value of your own joy as being important, not just for you, but for all of us. Not in a way that brings pressure, like, oh, I have to be happy all the time, but in a genuine way of, I'm going to look for those things that do bring me joy. And then you will notice them more, and then you can kind of take this to the next step of then soaking it in more too as you kind of go through your day and you get in this practice of looking for the roses. Um, I'll give you a small example. In my town, there's a church that rings these beautiful bells like every day at noon, and then there's some other times that they ring them. But I love hearing those bells, and they're always like a pretty little song. And the other day, I was sitting outside, and I was focused on like an email I had to send that was like a little bit involved in terms of how I needed to communicate, what I needed to communicate. And so I was kind of focused in on that. And then the church bells rang, and I was like, oh, I love those church bells. And then I kind of went back to my email, and then I was like, no, wait, let's just listen to the song. Like, it's probably 1 minute long. And I just paused on my email and appreciated the song because that way, I know the bells are something that kind of brightens my day, but when I'm able to really stop and be in the moment with the bells, that does even more for me. And then I'm getting more richness out of life. I'm being more present. And then I went back to my email when that was over. So, that's one example of how we can start to really savor these things and kind of let ourselves soak them in. The other thing about having a practice where you are looking for or seeking the roses, the joys, the gratitude, is it can put things in perspective. Maybe things are really, really hard for you right now. Maybe you're totally overwhelmed or you're kind of sinking in grief. You've had a huge loss. You're worried about paying the bills. You're faced with a new diagnosis. You're exhausted by an ongoing issue. You're facing a hard decision. Yes, and you can still have a rose. It could be things like, I have clean water to drink, or I have a hot shower. The pink blossoms on the tree I saw today were so beautiful. I have a roof over my head or shelter. Or maybe you're in the hospital. I have a beautifully warm blanket that a nurse brought me, or this care provider was so kind and warm to me today, or I can see some birds nesting out the window. Whatever it is, we can always find something. And then that puts you into that state of gratitude, which again is good for our mood and it's good for our health. And it also kind of attracts more good things to you. So it's really a lovely thing to focus on what brings us joy. And then you do learn more about yourself. Or if you are doing this with somebody, you learn more about, your partner, your child, your friend, someone new in a group, because you're continually getting more little pieces of information about what lights them up. And maybe it changes over time too. And here's an example. Maybe you're a parent and you notice that a lot of times your child's rose has to do with some kind of encounter with an animal. Like they saw the neighbor or a friend walking by with their dog and got to pet the dog, and that was really lovely. Or they saw these pretty birds at the water. And if you notice that the animal keeps being a theme, maybe, when that child is looking to do some service work or looking to get their first job, you start thinking about the Humane Society or, things like that. So it can help guide you and also help you guide others too toward like more and more of what are the things that are meaningful to you. Maybe you notice that someone's rose or yours has a lot to do with downtime and being alone to recharge, just doing nothing, time to read a book, to sit by the water, to sit outside, time to journal and just be with nothing on the calendar. And so maybe you're able to then reflect back to them, encouraging more time for just nothing, more open time, more of a balanced schedule. So you can kind of see these patterns over time and then make bigger changes, that would benefit you. So that's about the rose. And one of the things that I also like about this practice is it can keep a conversation more balanced, like within either a partnership or a family or a group, when you're not doing it alone, because there can be people who will really dominate a discussion, or kind of really draw the attention in a group, and they kind of take on that role and everybody sort of goes with it. And then sometimes other people don't really get to share, or people sort of start to lose interest if they feel like they're not really being listened to. And so this is a way that you kind of guarantee everybody's voice counts, everybody's voice matters, and make sure that that's kind of a little more equality within a group setting. It can also, when it's part of just a normal routine, it can make it less scary for people to share, because a lot of people will feel uncomfortable sharing their feelings, and this can be kind of a personal practice, because you're sharing these details of what's meaningful to you, what's hard for you, what's joyful to you, that sort of thing. But the more you get in a practice with just this little fun, thing, it becomes easier. And so it kind of teaches people to be comfortable with that too, which I think is really great. So let's talk about the thorn. The thorn would be your challenge point of the day, something hard about your day. Something you didn't like about your day. Could be anything, big or small. And why do we share this? Why do we address the fact that there's a thorn? Because life isn't just all roses. It's the whole thing. The rose has a thorn. It's the whole garden. There's weeds. There's weather issues. There's creatures that might eat the things you planted. And if we tell ourselves or try to present that everything's just supposed to be happy and we never talk about anything that's challenging, we're kind of diminishing ourselves and our wholeness, and in some cases not letting our true feelings come to surface. Or if it's with other people, we're kind of teaching them indirectly then, that to sort of deny their feelings or deny other people's feelings, and it's sort of a pretending type situation. And it can be a setup then, especially for kids, if they learn that like we don't really talk about challenging things or bad things. It can be a setup for feeling then guilty when things are hard, or feeling guilty for emotions. And on this note, I would invite you to listen to my episode 4, if you haven't already, which shares a new perspective about emotions, and just talks about the importance of acknowledging and addressing and being okay with all of our feelings and emotions, including the hard ones. And we don't have to like drown in them or overemphasize them, but we have to be in touch with the reality that they are things that we feel, and then we can deal with them in a healthy way. And so, this is part of addressing the fact that we have a thorn, is part of learning about ourselves. It's part of seeing life in a little bit of a more balanced way. And then also noticing patterns again, because if we notice something and we see a pattern, then we can address it. So, for example, maybe you would see like repeating stressors, things that keep draining you, or like what I call low level ongoing stressors, where it kind of like is bothering you every day. Maybe you don't realize how much it bothers you. And without taking the time and energy to pause and reflect on it and go, let's find a solution. This is an ongoing thing that could be solved or that I need support for, or whatever. Um, so I'll give you an example of, or some examples of thorns. So maybe your thorn from the day was feeling rushed, or it's something specific about that happened at work, or something in your school environment. Thorn could be you're tired of being tired, tired of being sick, not getting to a project that's meaningful to you. Somebody was rude to you or cut you off in traffic out in the world. You heard or read about something that's disturbing you. You feel like you don't have enough quality time with your partner. They're always traveling or focused on this thing or that thing. Or you always feel like there's not quite enough money. You're tired of sitting in traffic and driving and your commute. Or you notice that you got together with this person and you just felt more lonely after, even though you were with them or with a group. Maybe it's a decision weighing on your mind. Maybe you tripped outside and it really threw you off. Could be anything. And sometimes having the time set aside for a practice like a rose thorn bud is the only time where someone gets to really share something that was hard for them. And so, in addition to just honoring the fact that sometimes there's little things or big things that aren't the best in life, and being okay with that, finding acceptance with it, it also can be a doorway into a bigger conversation, either for yourself or for others. If you notice there's an ongoing thing or something's like really getting at you. So, and some of these might not be things you would necessarily share in a group, but maybe when you reflect on it, you recognize that it is a thing for you. So, I'll give you an example of seeing a pattern with something bigger. So, let's say your thorn has to do with maybe you have like an adult child who's really going through a hard time and is off course. You're worried about them. And you might reflect on that and go, what do I need to do in this situation? I need to set aside some extra time to sit with this and to think about it. Is it time for me to do some inner work before I decide what's next? Is it time for me to learn about what's a healthy boundary in this situation, or talk to a professional, a therapist, or something about it? Is it time for me to have a conversation with this, adult child? Or is it time for me to shift my perspective about what my responsibility is, or to hand it over? There's different ways, but until we see that this is an ongoing stressor and an ongoing thorn, we might not really go, okay, I'm going to stop and take some real time to dive into this and see what's next for me. Or maybe your thorn is feeling tired. Maybe that's kind of popping up a lot. And you realize, yeah, because you've been having a hard time falling asleep at night, sleeping well. And then maybe you realize you also haven't been exercising on the days when you can't sleep well. And so it can help you connect the dots and go, okay, then maybe you have more inspiration or motivation to actually get your exercise in, because you recognize the different kind of how that plays out. Or maybe your thorn is, from the day is something that you heard or watched, or saw, and it's making you feel, or it made you feel angry, or it made you feel fearful, or it made you feel, kind of brought up some hatred within yourself. Then you can notice that and ask yourself, is that helpful for me? Was that helpful for me or the world? Or might there be another way for me to spend my time and energy that would be more beneficial to me and also help me make more of a contribution to the world in regard to the things that I care about. So every thorn is important. Something really uh, important to note is also that we treat these things without judgment, both for ourselves and for others. I mean, if anything, we're just listening with compassion. Um, if there's something, bigger that warrants more of a conversation, or you can offer to talk about it later, can kind of bookmark it and say, oh, do you want to discuss that more? Or to ask, like, do you just want to be listened to? Or do you want ideas about that? Just to make sure you don't kind of like fall down a line of trying to like fix something when maybe somebody just wants to be listened to or just wants to share it and move on. And also so that, for example, especially with like a parent-child relationship, that it doesn't start to become like an inquiry, or they don't feel like they're being like really dug into when they just wanted to simply share a little thorn. So you just want to be mindful of not going too deep into somebody's thorn if it's not the time or place for it. And of course, remembering that when people are sharing, this is their feelings, this is what was challenging for them. We're all unique beings, and there's no right or wrong or good or bad about our feelings. And we, of course, never want to tease or diminish or shame or like counter or negate what somebody's thorn is. If it's something that was hard for them, it was something that was hard for them. And hopefully we can treat ourselves the same way. As well, because when we don't, then we're just going to shut down the sharing, not only in, the practice, but just in the relationship. It can kind of shut down sharing. And it can be personal to share some of these because it is really a window into someone. And things that are small for one person might feel um, bigger to somebody else because there's more behind it. And so if people are being vulnerable and sharing anything, even if it doesn't feel like it's a big deal, we just always want to be respectful about that and just be compassionate listeners and understand that it's their turn to speak and give them the attention and respect and honoring that they're sharing what's true for them. Okay, so let's see. The other thing about sharing a thorn, especially if it's like you're in a group setting where some of the things might affect other people, is it can help you make a more like cohesive, harmonious group. So let's say, for example, that my partner has shared a frustration that the house is messy. And maybe over time, let's say I'm the messy person in the house and I'm always leaving my stuff around, and maybe I start to realize that actually affects people more than I realized. If let's say I'm not a person who cares if it's messy or not. Um, and so I start to go, oh gosh, I see that that is a thorn for my partner. I'm gonna try to really make more of an effort to change that habit because I care about my partner and I don't want my choice to be messy to contribute to their frustration. So it can be really beneficial for relationships too, where you're, living with or working with or at school with a group. Or maybe I notice like somebody's very stressed or their thorn, it doesn't even have to be very stressed, but their thorn was being rushed. And this is kind of a theme, is feeling rushed and behind and frazzled. These other things come up when they feel rushed. So maybe I kind of bookmark that, like, this should be a discussion later. Let's talk about some strategies. Like, we can prevent this, we can work with this. How do we do that? Maybe now's not the time, but let's bookmark it and talk about that later. And that's going to be something supportive for, whoever's feeling that stress about being rushed. Or it can be something bigger, like noticing maybe it's time for a career change or a change in schools or a breakup or a move, or time to expand my paradigm about what is possible when dealing with a chronic health issue, or what is possible in terms of a spiritual path or a religious path. Maybe it's just opening the mind up to something bigger. So could be anything that comes from this. Okay, so that was the thorn. And now let's talk about the bud. This is just anything that we look forward to. I like to keep this relatively close to the time. So it's not like you're always looking forward to something really far out. There's an easy tendency for um, looking forward to something really big, and I think it's actually more beneficial to notice the smaller things that we look forward to, because these are sort of the threads that create our everyday life, not the thing that's happening 3 months from now that maybe is fun to look forward to, but what about my everyday life? Can I look forward to? And so I encourage people to find things like ideally within the next 24 hours that you're looking forward to, but you can do this the way you want. Um, but many times it is the smallest things that are the biggest things. And so examples of buds could be, you're looking forward to a fall weekend. You're looking forward to wearing your cozy sweatshirt because you saw the temperature is going to drop. Or you're looking forward to your plans for warm soup. Or you're going to have a bonfire that night. Or you're looking forward to seeing a friend that you have plans with, or you're looking forward to your time that night that you have set aside for prayer or meditation or reading before bed. It can be any little thing. Looking forward to your bath. And it's just important to have things to look forward to. It's really good for our health. It's good for our mood. It's good for our health. And I think that verbalizing it and saying it out loud, like this is my bud, this is what I'm looking forward to, it gives some accountability. Whether you're saying it out loud or you're like writing it down, if you do this yourself and you're keeping a journal or just kind of noting it in your mind. Although I will say that writing things down or saying them out loud does help kind of make it even more concrete and bring it more into reality and make it more likely to happen. But you can also kind of have support around it. So let's say, you know, you see your partner and they're going to some tasks that they're taking care of that evening, and you could say, oh, weren't you going to take that bath? Weren't you excited about taking a bath tonight? And maybe it helps them go, oh yeah, I was going to take a bath and I just got on this track about things I needed to do and I was looking forward to that, and I'm going to pause now and take a bath and make sure I do the thing I was looking forward to, because that's important. So we can it can help us make sure that we do the thing, and then it can help us support other people in doing the things that are meaningful to them. Or, to know things that you might not otherwise. You might not always know what people are looking forward to. And let's say someone in the group mentioned they're really looking forward to this play that you're planning to go to, or this outdoor concert, and that's kind of been, a thing that they feel excited about. And then on that day, there's some changes and you're thinking, oh, let's not do that anymore. But now you know that somebody was really looking forward to it, so that's going to calculate in, oh wait, that was important to this person, let's make sure that we still do that. Or if we really can't, let's see how to make it right, or do our best way of compromising, because we had this information beforehand about, that was important to somebody. And then I also want to say that, like, sometimes when we're feeling really flat or down, it can feel like there's nothing to look forward to. And at these times, just especially if you do it with somebody else, like, find something just tiny, something really minuscule that you can look forward to. And challenge yourself to just bring something that's a little bit of a spark. And this can kind of help you search your mind and search your heart about what are the things that would bring me joy. What is something that I can look forward to? And that can energize us. It can kind of lift us up if we're feeling really flat, and help us find things to look forward to and help us create things to look forward to. So, for example, if I was going, okay, I'm having a hard time thinking of something, maybe it's like, you know what, I'm gonna go tonight, I'm gonna spend 5 minutes before bed and just look at the stars. That's something I'd like to do more often. And so, I come up with an idea that I might not have otherwise. And then I have a moment looking at the stars. Or maybe it's like, I can't figure out anything to look forward to. I'm gonna cook my favorite meal this weekend, or I'm gonna bake this thing I love, this amazing cake, or I'm gonna make sure I spend some time playing the piano. I haven't done that in a while. So it can kind of help you make things happen, and create the things to look forward to because we are creative beings. We are co creating our life. And these little moments add up and kind of weave into the tapestry that is what kind of a life do we want. So, this can help us like make sure we're tracking and creating things that we can look forward to, creating more of the life that works for us, which could be totally different than the life that works for somebody else. And by having this kind of reflective practice, we're always going back in, going, what is it for me? What is it that's right for me? Um, that's about the bud. And I also want to share a few little pieces of general etiquette. I think it's important in group sharing activities like rose, thorn, bud that we always say straight up that people can pass. Just set that right up right away. People can pass if they don't want to share. There's no pressure, but we can demonstrate doing it. And over time, people who felt not comfortable or just wanted to pass for any reason might decide to share. And then I want to also mention too, just again being aware of like a lack of trust can kind of shut things down. So setting up with a group at the start of anything, at the start of any new practice or new anything, especially the group, it's really helpful to just lay out like some ground rules about respect and about non-judgment and about what does it mean to be a good listener, and just making sure also that like if somebody's sharing something a little bit personal, that it's not to be shared outside of the group. Not that all these things have to be big deep things, but just to create a sense of trust among the people who are sharing. And I can't remember if I said this now, but I plan to do an episode at some point about healthy communication. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then another little etiquette thing is, consider the audience. Part of respectful communication is we probably don't want to say that our thorn is somebody else who's in the group. That's not going to be very helpful. Unless there's like a way of sharing that a particular behavior or choices affecting you. For example, if it was, my thorn is it's messy, and there was other people contributing to that for them to just recognize that's how I feel, that's my authentic share, but it's not a blame where I'm saying you're my thorn because you're messy. So that takes on a little bit of a different tone, and then this isn't going to be a fun practice anymore. And it can be a really fun practice for people and really bonding. As well. And then just kind of being mindful of who's in the audience and being sensitive about what kind of topics or things might not be to share. And I can note that it's my rose or my thorn or my bud, but what am I going to say out loud is maybe something a little different. That's also a rose or thorn or bud, but I'm just being mindful of who's present. And then another little piece is to make sure you keep it moving along. Sometimes again, we can go too far down, or especially in a relationship where it's like a parent child or even a partnership. If it starts to feel like an inquisition or a lecture, then we're kind of not going with the intention of this. So remembering if there's something to bookmark or talk about later, great. But we want to make sure this is light and fun, and keep it moving along, making sure everybody gets to talk and not sort of forgetting if things dissolve. Let's say you're having dinner and people are done and they start to walk away. Wait a minute, this person hasn't shared or whatever. Just making sure everybody really does get to speak. So let's see. Oh, and then I wanted to say too, I think this is a fun idea for like people you haven't seen in a while, if you're just catching up, and sort of what's been a rose and thorn and bud in your life. So it doesn't necessarily have to be from that day. If it's people you say once a week or whatever, what's one from the last week that you want to share? Um, though I do think doing this on a daily basis is really nice because you catch more of those little moments. And so let's see. I think that's about it. A reminder, you can do this with yourself, with a journal. You can do it with a partner, a family, a group. Getting into a habit with it, I think is really fun, becomes second nature, and it can really create positive bonds and help you discover so much more than you would otherwise without that daily little reflection. Also, along the lines of reflection and awareness, I just will remind you that my number one health tip is self-awareness. Or if somebody asked me if I could give one piece of advice for somebody about their health and their well-being, it would be to look at self-awareness. And I share a lot more about that in episode 2 and 3. So I would invite you, if you haven't heard those, to go back and have a listen, because that all kind of applies to what we're talking about today too. So thank you so much for listening to this. I hope if it's of interest that you'll give it a try. And if this kind of content, this podcast, is contributing to you in your life, I hope that you'll follow along by subscribing. And then if you hit the bell on YouTube, you get notified if there's a new episode. Or to listen to the podcast, it's free on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and you can click to follow the show there. If you like it, I hope you'll rate or like it, just because that helps other people find it more. Um, and also, of course, if you have any friends who you think would benefit from this information, I hope that you'll pass it along and share it with them as well. It is free on all of the platforms. And next time, I am not sure yet, but I might do an episode talking about some tips for better sleep. That's something that is challenging for quite a lot of people, so we might dive into that. So we will see. Thank you so much for listening, and take care. Bye bye.